Good morning. You're locked in live, and I'm your host, Algenon. Every Sunday morning, I invite you to join me right here on WTOB at 8 a.m. for the only public affairs radio show that brings you my unique commentary on a wide range of topics. And of course, you always get a sneak peek at the values and principles that I use in my own life to achieve success daily. I've got a really exciting show for you this morning. I've got WXII news anchor Briana Conner. She's back, and she's going to be updating us on a local story that she's been closely following. And I've also got attorney Kwame Opata, an old friend of mine. He's joining the show this morning to discuss all things Trump, and you certainly won't want to miss what he has to say. And of course, we'll touch on what's happening with the national political scene. But before we get started, I got to tell you about something that happened to me this past Friday. Every Friday in my house, we celebrate Fish Friday, and that's not F-R-I, that's F-R-Y. That's right, Fish Friday. And this past Friday, we had fried shrimp, we had fried oysters, we had some amazing hush puppies, not to mention blackened chicken. Where did all this come from? It came from Scrimp Shack. Scrimp Shack, 1103 Silas Creek Parkway, right in the heart of Parkway Plaza Shopping Center right here in Winston-Salem. So I want to encourage you all, if you haven't been by the Scrimp Shack, and yes, I'm saying Scrimp with a K, so you know it's really good. Go check out Scrimp Shack, 1103 Silas Creek Parkway. Every week they've got amazing specials. Every Monday is Family Day. So that means kids eat for half off with the purchase of any sandwich, basket, or platter. Every Tuesday is Taco Tuesday, which is my absolute favorite. That means all tacos are 2 for $5. And then every Wednesday, they celebrate community heroes. So if you're a teacher, firefighter, police officer, if you work for the city, the federal government, if you're a postal worker, so many people included under that umbrella. If you're a community hero, go to Scrimp Shack every Wednesday. You get 20% off. So again, Scrimp Shack, that's 1103 Silas Creek Parkway, right there in the heart of the Parkway Plaza Shopping Center. Make sure you go check them out. So let's go ahead and kick into the show. As I said, I've got WXII news anchor Briana Conner is back to join us all the way from the big state of Texas to right here in little old Winston-Salem. Briana, how are you this morning?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me back on your show.
Well, we're glad to have you back. And of course, I've been keeping up with all the great work that you do at WXII. We appreciate you telling all these amazing local stories and being so engaged and obviously helping local residents to know what's going on in their backyard. I know recently there was a video released, a video of John Neville. And for my listeners that don't know about John Neville, you need to know about John Neville. This was an African-American man that was actually killed while in custody at the Forsyth County Detention Center. District Attorney Jim O'Neill has actually charged 5 separate people in the murder of John Neville. And recently they just released a video showing those moments leading up to his actual death. And Briana has been doing some great reporting, not only on the video, but also on the protests that have continued to occupy Bailey Park right here in downtown Winston-Salem, as well as the candlelight vigil that they just recently held in honor of John Neville. So, Briana, I want to start off by just sort of getting your thoughts and your reaction to the video itself.
Yeah, so number one, we had to really fight in the court system to actually even get that video. WXII was one of a number of news outlets who actually got together, formed a group, got an attorney, and had to petition a judge and really make a compelling argument that this video was in the public interest to be released, because as it stands under North Carolina law, a judge has to approve the release of police body camera video, or in this case, camera and video of what happened inside the correction center that led to the death of John Neville. And so a couple of weeks ago when it came out, that was because of our petition to a judge to release that footage. So again, the public could see what happened to this man. At that point, his family had changed their minds. Originally, they did not want the public to see it, but they had changed their minds. The sheriff, Bobby Kimbrough, said that he would support whatever the family decided they wanted to do. So at that point, we went ahead and, as mentioned, joined that media group, got a judge to agree with us that it's in the public interest. And so the videos were released. It's about 45 minutes in total, and it's 2 videos. The first one basically shows what happened on December 2nd when John Neville basically fell out of the top bunk where he was being held at the detention center. He had a medical episode. That's how they're describing it. Fell out of that bunk. His cellmate called for some help. And then the second video picks up basically where they are restraining him in that prone restraint, which we commonly call a hog tie, which the autopsy and the medical examiner and our DA has basically concluded that's what led to John Neville's death.
Yeah, and I encourage all my listeners, if you have not seen the video, it's certainly insightful. I would encourage you. I'm sure you could find it somewhere on the internet. It's pretty widely available. So I would encourage any of you that have not actually watched the video to actually go see the video. I've seen it probably 2 or 3 times at this point. I tend to take more of a conservative view of a lot of different things. I personally. Leading up to the video, I had many friends tell me that the video was very graphic. I personally did not think the video was nearly as graphic as the death of George Floyd. Obviously, the death of any individual is horrific, but I certainly didn't think it was nearly as graphic. What has been, Briana, your audience that watched WXII, what's been their reaction to the video?
I think they were highly disturbed by it. I think in any instance where you're actually seeing someone's final lucid moments is disturbing. And we only aired snippets of it on WXII. And before we aired those, we included a warning saying what you're about to see is disturbing. And that's because I think, we have to be careful about opinion and fact, but the fact of the matter is, whenever you observe, again, someone taking their last lucid moments to ask for help and to cry out for their mother and to say they can't breathe, that's disturbing. And so we wanted to warn our viewers about that, and then of course give them the option of whether or not they wanted to see it or not. And I certainly understand both reactions to it. People who feel like they want to know exactly what happened to this man, and then people who want to maybe protect themselves a bit and protect themselves because the video has been described as well as traumatic. The family described it to me as traumatic, obviously, because that's their loved one. So I certainly understand people who want to see it, and I certainly understand people who would rather not.
Now, and again, I encourage my listeners, if you'd like to see that video, John Neville, definitely go search that out on the internet. You should come across it some kind of way. And, take a look for yourself. There's a group right now, Briana, that is occupying Bailey Park in downtown Winston-Salem. And this group took occupation of Bailey Park after the release of the John Neville video. What are some of the demands? What is this group hoping to see at the end of the day?
Yeah, they actually started occupying Bailey Park. At this point, it would be 32 days. Yesterday was 31 days. So they've been out there for over a month now, and they have 4 expressed demands. The first is they want their questions answered about what happened to John Neville. Although we have the body camera video, they have questions about the process. They want to know a lot of things, some of them including why the public wasn't notified immediately. This death happened in 2019. We found out about it, or the sheriff's office made its first public statements about it only about a month and a half ago. So they have questions about the medical procedures that were in place, and a certain number of things. It's all on their website, triadabolitionproject.com, but they want their questions answered. They want the hog tie, commonly called hog tie restraint, to be banned, whether that's to be used on a citizen or someone who is incarcerated. They want that to be banned completely. They want charges dropped against protesters who were arrested by Winston-Salem police, because there's a difference there. But this doesn't have anything to do with the sheriff's department, but certain protesters, 55 of them, have been arrested by Winston-Salem police for impeding traffic. And so they feel like they were protesting peacefully. Police officers observed them breaking the law, so they were arrested, and they want those charges dropped. And then there's one more demand. Actually, I'm going to have to get to my notes here because it's not coming to me immediately. They would like the public to be notified immediately whenever someone dies in the detention facility. So those are the 4 demands right there.
No, I appreciate you sharing that. If you're just now tuning in, you're locked in live every Sunday morning right here on WTOB. I ask you to meet me right here for an insightful conversation, and you're listening to WXII news anchor Briana Conner. She's back on the show updating us about a fairly important local story. Briana, I want to ask you a question. This isn't necessarily about something in our backyard, but it is something that I'm starting to see more of on some of my social media timelines. Recently there was a 5-year-old kid, white kid, that was killed in Wilson, North Carolina by an African-American gentleman. And that man happens to be in jail. Justice was served pretty quickly to that gentleman. But there seems to be this series of posts and requests that I'm seeing across social media right now, or even accusations that media, not just local media, but even national media, hasn't been covering this story as well. What would you say to those folks that are accusing stations of like WXI and many others of not properly covering that story?
Well, anytime a life is cut short, it's tragic, particularly when you're dealing with a child, a 5-year-old child who had done nothing, which is certainly the circumstances of what's going on with this young man, Cannon Hinnant. He was shot and killed on Sunday. We found out about it. We found out about the details closer to Tuesday, and then we've been covering it pretty closely since Wednesday. But there certainly has been a large movement, seemingly, of people who are really calling for attention to this, which they, have every right to, and certainly should, because a child is dead who should not be. And we've also seen a lot of similar things happening here in Winston-Salem. A 15-year-old was shot and killed this week. A 9-year-old was shot. They are expected to survive, but the violence, and especially when it involves children, is devastating, and it's tragic, and it certainly deserves media attention. I think that we get in a little bit of inaccuracy. We get into an area of inaccuracy when we try to compare these deaths to some other deaths that have spawned protest, right? So people are moved, in my opinion, to protest when they sense that there's been an injustice. And an injustice is when a life is cut short and there's no punishment, there's no recourse. It's as if a life is cut short, and that's just that. But in this instance, especially with Cannon Hinnant, he was killed senselessly. Within 24 hours, his alleged killer was arrested. This man is in jail, and he will likely never be free again. And so in this situation, you have something very tragic that happened, but you don't necessarily have an injustice that would prompt a protest on a large scale, that would prompt large-scale media attention for weeks and weeks and weeks, like you have seen with a John Neville, like you have seen with a George Floyd. It's similar in that these people should be alive, but very different in that you gotta see the system.
No, I totally agree. I thank you for providing me that insight. Real quick here, because I've got to wrap up. When can my listeners catch you on WXII?
Yeah, weekdays, Monday through Friday. They're switching my schedule up a little bit right now because of the virus and just how we've got to float people around. But I'll be on every afternoon at 4, and then you can catch me on the Triad CW at 10, and then at 11 on WXII again as well. And I want to encourage people, check out my Facebook page. I was in the streets immediately on the day that the John Neville video dropped. I was following the protesters. I experienced everything they experienced. I was there when we heard from John Neville's children, Neville family, and the way that they've handled this, and what it says about the type of people they are, and what it's said about the type of city that this is. I was with them all day, and including at the candlelight vigil that kind of concluded the night's event.
Yeah, you've certainly done great reporting, and I encourage my listeners to go check out your Facebook page. Make sure they watch you on WXII. Again, you're locked in live. If you're just not joining us, you just heard from WXII news anchor Briana Conner. Briana, thank you again for joining us.
Of course.
All right, we're going to move into our next segment here. Like I said, I've got an old friend that's joining me. Kwame, what's going on, man? How are you this morning?
Man, I can't complain at all. How about yourself, man? It's good to see you, man.
I'm doing good, man. I hadn't seen you in a little while. Look like you've grown out a beard and hadn't had a shave in a while.
This is my new Republican beard that I'm wearing, man, just to kind of show you what happens when we elect Republicans in office, man.
Well, you just came into the show and you're already trying to create some fireworks. But for anyone that have not heard Kwame Opata, Kwame is a local attorney right here in Winston-Salem. I think you also practice over in Guilford County as well. Kwame and I have been known to spar quite a bit when it comes to Donald Trump as well as national politics. So happy to have him on the show with us this morning. No doubt you will certainly learn a little something in the next few minutes listening to Kwame. So Kwame, I'm going to just jump right into it, man. I've got limited time, but right now, Senate Republicans and House Democrats, they're at a logjam right now, man. They can't seem to come to any kind of an agreement on an additional round of stimulus for the country. Obviously, the country is still reeling from the whole coronavirus outbreak, and the economy is in the midst of a crisis. Trump took action, though. Trump decided to go ahead and sign an executive order that would essentially go ahead and extend the federal unemployment benefits that so many families had come to depend on. He's also doing a deferral on student loan payments. Trying to put a moratorium in place on rental evictions. Essentially, what I believe Trump is trying to do is the work that Congress is unable to do right now. But what's your reaction, Kwame? What do you think? Is it just all politics, or is he really trying to help the people?
It's just all politics. Trump knows right now that I think any Democratic package would have to include voting rights protections for the post office and things in general that Republicans don't want. They don't want people voting, and they certainly don't want voting by mail to be easy accessible, easily tracked, and easy for citizens to do. And so I think what he's done is just kind of created what I would call kind of, I don't want to say fake, but kind of a weird workaround on Congress when he's pretending that he has powers that he doesn't have. And so I think what you'll find is that the executive order covers a lot of things that basically he just simply doesn't have the power to actually do. And so it's just politics, and I respect the game. I mean, we're in an election year. I'm not bashing him in any way for doing what he has to do in order to make it look like he's acting. That's the game. It's game politics, man. And if you love the game, you got to respect when presidents do things like this.
Well, you say that we're in the middle of an election. This is I think every 4 years we say that this is the biggest election of our lifetime, and so I think once again this is the biggest election of our lifetime. And Joe Biden, former vice president during the Obama administration, Democratic presidential candidate going into this election cycle, just selected Kamala Harris, Senator Kamala Harris, let me get it right, as his running mate this November. Now, I don't know. I'm encouraging my listeners, if you don't know a lot about Kamala Harris, go study her, go read about her, go read her Wikipedia page, go do some of those kind of things. But personally, I believe, Kwame,
Right.
I believe Miss Harris, I believe Senator Harris has a troubling history, man. And you work in the court system. You've defended many people against baseless criminal charges. And I think Senator Harris has a troubling history when it comes to her time as a prosecutor in California. I mean, what do you think? Do you think Senator Harris is actually going to give Biden a boost going into November? I mean, you still there?
I think she will, man. And I know we talk about each election being the biggest, but if you think about it, a lot of what we say is trying to, Oh yeah, I'm here. Hey, you get me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. I've got your audio. Yeah, I've
Hey.
got your audio, Kwame. Kwame, you there?
Okay, good.
Yeah, I've got you. I got you.
Okay, good. All right, man. I'm here. Okay. Yes, what I was saying was, man, when you look at the criminal justice system, it's important, better person to put in the White House other than somebody who has actually worked in the system, right? And would know exactly how to make changes in the system. So I believe she's the perfect running mate for Joe. And I know we talk about each election being the most important, but if you think about it, when Bush ran against Gore, right? We said that's the most, important election of our lifetime, right? And we were right. 9/11 happened. When Obama ran, we said, oh, this is the most important election of our lifetime, right? And it was. Obama literally saved the world economically. Now we said that when Trump was running, that was the most important, election of our lifetime. Now look at us. We're all stuck in a house on quarantine, right? And so every election has consequences. And you know me, we talk about it. I like the fact that elections have consequences because too many people who don't think their vote matters, who think voting is not important, who thinks politics is a game. But now when you're stuck in a house having to fix hot dogs every day, right? Now you know how serious politics can be. And I encourage everybody to get out and vote. Because as you can see, man, look, there's consequences when you don't. And it's clear, they're quick, and they come and they can be devastating. And in this case, it is devastating, man. We have a president who simply dropped the ball on the pandemic. And now we're at a point where things are so bad, people are just talking about this is how life is going to be from now on. But that's not true. If you elect the right people who won't disband pandemic teams, people who will take this stuff seriously, the American way of life seriously, then you won't have these things happen.
No, I always agree with you. I agree. I don't always agree with you. I won't say that, but I definitely agree with you that every election has consequences, and that's
Absolutely.
why it's so important that people stay informed, stay engaged, know what's going on out there, not just what's happening nationally, which is what we're talking about this morning, but also what is happening locally, and so that is so important that we all get out and vote. And so and to my listeners, if you just joined us, you're locked in live. I'm your host, Algenon Cash. I do this every Sunday morning with you at 8 a.m. right here on WTOB. The other voice that you're listening to is local attorney Kwame Opata, and also good friend of mine, and resident Trump basher, if I may also give you that title. But I think I think Democrats has got a really tough choice going into November this year around. I think for some of those issues that they say are most important, equality amongst all races, criminal justice reform, those types of things, making sure we reduce over-policing in Black and brown communities, all of those seem to be emerging top issues for Democrats. But then when I look at the Democratic presidential nominee, if anyone has been more involved in locking up Black and brown folks, it's probably been Joe Biden. And, Joe Biden also has a long history of really questionable and to some degree racist remarks. Kwame, help me understand, man. You're a Democrat. How can Democrats be fired up about this candidate?
Well, it's important to remember because my history, man. I grew up poor. I grew up in the projects, right? And so now that we are in 2020, people forget how it was back in 91, 92, 93, when, we talk about criminal justice reform and criminal reform. The Congressional Black Caucus and a lot of people were actually behind that because of the just devastating effects of crime, criminality, and drugs had on our communities. And so now it's easy, looking back to say, oh, it's just too much. But at the time, things were exploding, man. Drugs, murder, gangs. It was insane. You had 20, 30-year-old men coming back recruiting 13, 14, 15-year-old boys to go out, sell drugs, murder, anything they wanted to do for them. So I believe, to me, now looking back, you can see that maybe the crime bill and other types of bills was maybe an overreaction. But when you're scared and you're going through it, you'd rather have somebody to overreact than not react at all, right? And so, yes, the crime bill in itself had an effect. But I believe just the history of this country when it comes to racism is what actually had the overt effect, right? Because I was in the projects, yes, but that doesn't mean I was selling drugs, right? So when you come in and have an officer police my community, why are you treating me like you're treating Pookie, who's on the corner and clearly selling drugs? We're not the same. And the fact that people don't understand that, that's what we're talking about. And that's what we're focusing on when we're talking about over-policing. It's important to remember crime exists, right? Criminals exist. It's crazy to me how many people pretend like, oh man, he just broke into your house to steal a TV. No, he broke into my house. And so for me, it's just important when you're talking about these things to just know Joe Biden cared enough, right, to formulate a bill to actually try to help people in those communities who did not want to be involved in crime, who did not want to be involved in selling drugs, right? Because, like I said, just because you live in a project doesn't mean you automatically want to do any of these things, right? So you can look back and say maybe it was an overreaction, but at least he cared enough to do something, right? And so now we're applauding Republicans for wanting to send military into the projects and all these things. And then we're at the same time wanting to bash Democrats for actually having a bill in place to try to help those communities, those same exact communities. And so when you look at Joe Biden, man, you look at somebody, to me, who has at least cared. You might say cared too much, but at least cared enough to do something. And so now that he has a Kamala Harris who's actually worked in a criminal court system, to me, this is a team that is more apt and more able to actually fix some of the problems that Democrats and actually African-American communities want. Like I said before, who's better apt and more able to talk about criminal justice reform than a prosecutor who actually worked in it, saw who they actually brought cases against and cases who they held back against. So I actually am very excited about this team, and more so than just an anti-Trump ticket. To me, they are the perfect tandem to actually get in and actually do something about the things African Americans and Democratic constituents care about.
Well, Kwame is always the great spin master. You can see why he's such a great attorney. You listen to his commentary and the way he just spun out of that. That was a good move. I got one last question I want to get out on the record. I've only got about 30 seconds for you to react to it, Kwame. You mentioned earlier about the post office, and recently President Obama is now accusing President Trump of using the United States Postal Service to suppress votes. Do you believe the mail-in ballot process is a safe way to conduct elections?
Yes. And I mean, at the end of the day, we've done it for decades, right? Our military men overseas, when they were fighting in the Iraq war, regularly sent their ballots in, and we're talking about from overseas. And so if sending our troops ballots from Iraq is safe and secure, then why in the world wouldn't a ballot from Kentucky be safe and secure? Just the theory that mail-in ballots and things like that is unsafe is insane to me, because I don't think any Republican in the world would say that the military personnel have been cheating and committing fraud at the ballot box for the last 10 to 15 years, right?
Yeah, I think you're slightly right on that one, Kwame. I don't believe there's any hard evidence that shows there's been widespread voter fraud when it comes to mail-in ballots. I do think that there are risks that are present. I mean, mail-in ballots can certainly be stolen out of mailboxes. They may not get processed correctly. They can all of a sudden turn up lost. But there are some risks. But I do think that we can put measures in place that can mitigate those risks. But again, I do agree with you that there has not been sort of widespread reported voter fraud when it comes to mail-in ballots. Again, folks, you're locked in live with Algenon Cash right here on WTOB every Sunday morning at 8 a.m. You just got through hearing from local attorney Kwame Opata. I promise you all, this was a short segment, so I'm running out of time, but I promise you I'm gonna bring Kwame back. He's a good old friend. He and I used to do Straight Talk on 102 Jams every Sunday morning. I tell you, Kwame, I like the time on this a lot better though. We're not having to get up at 5:36 a.m. to do it. So I like this a little bit better. But yeah, we definitely got to bring Kwame back. And as I get ready to close, I do want to share something with you all that I actually heard this morning, moments before I recorded the show today. I lost my grandfather. Someone that I care deeply about. He has passed on to be with the Lord. And so I do want to use this closing moment to just memorialize him, to let everyone out there that's listening and my listening audience let you know that J.B. Dunlap was someone who meant the world to me. He was someone that served this community as a bus driver. He was also the president of the bus drivers union. And somebody that really just taught me a lot and shared a lot of knowledge with me, and not just knowledge, because knowledge is education, but wisdom, which is what my grandfather would always tell me, is the application of that knowledge. And so I would not be the man that I am without J.B. Dunlap. You would not be listening to this show without J.B. Dunlap. And so as I get ready to close, I just want you all to not only keep me and my family in your prayers, but also just remember that name, J.B. Dunlap. Y'all stay locked in.